The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Students of the Game. My name is Alex Baumann, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Nathan Glidewell. Unfortunately, Greg cannot be with us to go over what Auburn's done on the transfer portal and dog Nathan with what's happened with Alabama in the portal. But before we get into all the portal acquisitions and transfers out in college football, let's talk about another college football story, Nathan, and what happened over the weekend in the award ceremony in awarding Travis Hunter the Heisman Trophy this year. Nathan, what are your thoughts on the committee and all the voters awarding Travis Hunter the Heisman over Ashton Jeanty from Boise State?
Look, I really think it's become a media award. The entire season, it felt like all the coverage was centered around Travis Hunter and the Colorado Buffs. I felt like it's been a big story, even going back to last season, and it continued in this one. I really thought that Ashton Jeanty was more deserving. I felt like what he did, even in the Mountain West Conference, was more than deserving to win the Heisman. One of the best running back seasons I've seen in a while, pretty much ever. And I know you had the whole argument, he played in a weak conference. Well, he did the same thing against Oregon, and they came up just short. He led his team to really a playoff berth, and I think that's something you have to take into account. Travis Hunter, he's a good player. He plays both sides of the ball. I think that really weighed a lot in the decision for most people to rank him in first for the Heisman voting. I really didn't feel like he was truly great at either position, wide receiver or corner. I just felt like he was good. He won the Blitnikoff. I felt like he was very undeserving for that. And that's kind of what led me to already figure out that he was going to win the Heisman too, because if he's able to win an award like the Blitnikoff, then he's going to win the Heisman. But I don't want to take away from what Travis Hunter did during the season, because I think he's a terrific player. I think he'll make a big impact in the NFL. I think he's a tremendous athlete. But I felt like Ashton Jeanty was just the more deserving player. And the fact that he didn't get the type of coverage, and even a lot of the guys on this list didn't get the type of coverage that Travis Hunter got throughout the season, I felt like it was very poor from ESPN and a lot of the other media, and really controlled how the Heisman race went.
Yeah, if you go look at ESPN's TikTok and you go see the start of the Heisman, like when they got there in New York and the end of the ceremony, and you go look at the videos they have posted, it largely favors Travis Hunter. I didn't see a video on Dylan Gabriel or Cam Ward like you got for Travis Hunter. Granted, we all knew going into that it was Travis Hunter or Ashton Jeanty, but to invite all four of them and to really only favor Travis Hunter, that's not what sports media is supposed to do. You're not supposed to show favoritism. But what some of these sports media outlets have done in years past is they favor the people that sell. They favor the LeBron James. They favor the Dallas Cowboys. They favor the Los Angeles Lakers. They favor the Travis Hunters of the world, because they know that's going to get people to watch the programs. And they don't give people like Ashton Jeanty, who is at a lower tier program in Boise State, they don't give him the attention that he really deserves. Now, they give Ashton Jeanty a lot of attention this year, but where's Cam Skattebo? Cam Skattebo could have easily been a top 3 Heisman candidate, but he's at Arizona State. Then you give Arizona State coverage this year. And giving them coverage isn't all what happens to the end of this award gets the award winner. But the coverage favoritism towards Travis Hunter and other athletes and teams around the country, it digs at me. It makes me mad, because there's other athletes and teams around this country that deserve the same amount of coverage as Travis Hunter in Colorado and the Lakers. This award really could have gone either way. Travis Hunter, to play both sides of the football at the level he played him at, is outstanding. I mean, we have really never seen that before. Charles Woodson was the closest thing to that, but Charles Woodson wasn't the type of receiver that Travis Hunter was. Now, he was a better corner than Travis Hunter was, but Travis Hunter is still a really good corner. So we have really never seen a player like Travis Hunter ever before. And yeah, deservedly so, he gets this award. It really could have gone either way between him and Jeanty, and the voters went with Hunter because we have really never seen a athlete like this before. We've seen a dominant running back before. We've seen Derrick Henry play football, and Derrick Henry didn't have the season Ashton Jeanty had, but he had a pretty good season. So the award voters did okay here. It really could have gone either way. There wasn't a right or wrong decision to put either Hunter or Jeanty on that podium. But Hunter did play great this season and got the award doing so. Nathan, let's flip over here from the Heisman Award to the transfer portal, talking about what has happened in the portal thus far. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, you can see the rankings as of today. We're recording this video, but right now, number 1, LSU, number 2, Ole Miss, 3, Texas Tech, 4, Auburn, 5, Minnesota, 6, Houston, 7, Texas A&M, 8, Louisville, 9, Mississippi State, and 10, Wisconsin. Nathan, what are your thoughts on what teams have done in the portal thus far?
Well, I think that they're capitalizing on their needs and the gaps that they've had from last season. LSU specifically utilizing the defensive end, kind of buffing that up. I felt like that was a huge area for them, especially on the defensive line. You taking into account what you're losing in the draft and then what possible you could lose in the transfer portal. They've capitalized a lot on that. Ole Miss, I felt like they've done the same there. And of course, you got Auburn on the list. Quarterback has been the biggest issue for them thus far. They get Jackson Arnold through the portal. I don't know what the whole future plan is for the offense for Hugh Freeze. I'm sure he has something in mind, but I don't know if that's really the biggest person you wanted to see. I think there are bigger names available that you could have waited on or offered a little bit more money to, but I'm not going to judge the pick right now. I mean, he took care of business against Alabama, so who am I to talk about that? Other teams on the list, A&M fills a big gap at receiver. Just all these other teams, I think, are a little surprising to me. And I guarantee it's earlier on in the cycle, but a lot of them have filled needs that they've immediately known about. But as we go through the coming months and through the transfer portal period, I'm sure you'll kind of see a lot of fluctuation towards the top of the list.
Yeah, talking about Auburn's quarterback room, Nathan, you see what they've got in the portal. They got Jackson Arnold, like you mentioned, from Oklahoma, but they also got Stanford quarterback Ashton Daniels. But on the flip side, they lose Holden Garner, Walker White, and Hank Brown to the portal, Walker White being the most notable name lost there. So you have a completely new QB room next season with Arnold, Daniels, and then incoming 4-star freshman Deuce Knight. What do you think about Hugh Freeze's transformation of this QB room? Do you think it's better than last year, worse than last year? Do you think it's going to work out? I mean, what do you think about it?
It's hard to give a better or worse answer right now just because I haven't seen this other quarterback room play a full season. It's definitely a big question mark for me. I thought there were going to be a bigger name maybe coming through the portal for Auburn to pick up. I felt that way last season, and Hugh Freeze kind of steered away from that. Not that Justin Arnold's a bad recruit. I mean, he came in, he was one of the most touted recruits from his class at the quarterback position. So I definitely think there's potential to be unlocked there. And if he's developed, all right, he can be a really good quarterback. But I think the bigger question is, what is Hugh Freeze plan going forward? Do you want Justin Arnold to start the season for you? Is he your guy, or do you want have Jackson Arnold to start the season and then kind of teach Deuce Knight? Do you think Deuce Knight's ready to go in and start? Is this an NFL veteran situation? Obviously, Jackson Arnold hasn't been the best passer. So a lot of questions. Ashton Daniels has his own problems. He turns the ball over. That's something the Auburn fans want to stay away from. So a lot of question marks in the room so far. I think it's very similar to what they had last season. But I feel like there's a higher ceiling, and that's one thing Auburn fans should be excited about, because let's say you hit on a guy like Jackson Arnold, you develop him well, you hit on a guy like Deuce Knight, then it kind of solves your quarterback issue. And you're already set up at wide receiver. You don't have to worry about that as long as people don't enter the portal. I think you're pretty set up well there. Your offensive line looks pretty good for next season. You've done a good job recruiting. So really, it's just gonna be it's a Hugh Freeze rebuild the quarterback room job. He's done it at Ole Miss. We've seen him do it at Ole Miss. It's just gonna be, can you do it again at Auburn?
I think it's already better from last year for Auburn, because if you look at it, Ashton Daniels has Power 4 starting experience at Stanford. Jackson Arnold has Power 4 starting experience at Oklahoma. He beat Alabama. And, Auburn fans won't say it, but when you beat Alabama, they love you. And that regardless of who you play for. So to get these two guys who have starting experience at high caliber programs, that's big for Hugh Freeze. And you also bring in Deuce Knight, who doesn't have to come in and start right away and get thrown to the wolves and thrown into the fire. He can learn from Jackson Arnold. He can learn from Ashton Daniels. And maybe he starts over them at the beginning of the year. I highly doubt that happens. But to bring in two experienced guys to teach Deuce Knight is very good for Hugh Freeze. And you lose Walker White, which is a big loss. But Deuce Knight, I think, by most Auburn fans and most media people's perspective, was the teacher of this program at the quarterback position. And losing Walker White is not a huge, huge deal for the Tigers. So, Nathan, let's move cross state here and talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide and their portal departures, because they haven't really gotten anybody out of the portal yet. You talk about Jaheim Otis, he's gone. Justice Haynes is gone. Kendrick Law, Devonta Smith, he enters the portal, and within 24 hours, he's committed to Notre Dame. Kobe Prentice is gone. Caleb Odom, Keanu Coate, Jaleel Hurley, Dylan Lonergan, Miles McVay, and then earlier on Monday, Jalen Mbakwe announces he's going to hit the portal as well after being on a podcast with Brian Williams. They host a podcast together as the freshmen. So what's going on with Alabama right now and the departures that we're seeing and the lack of incoming people we've seen thus far?
Yeah, I think it's easy to overreact to the sheer amount of names that entered the portal. Look, if you're an Alabama fan, you went through this last year. I mean, when Nick Saban retired, the amount of people that entered the portal, the crazy names, you feel like the program's burning down. You don't recognize Alabama football anymore. Well, Kalen DeBoer steps in. He's able to keep some guys, really talk them into staying and going through the process of transformation of the program. Look, I think I have a lot more respect for the guys who did that and then stood around and then they want to transfer now. I think I have a lot more respect for them. They went through the process. They gave Kalen DeBoer a chance. Realized it probably didn't work out for them personally, and they're going to go do what they need to do to take care of their business and go to a different university. But I also feel like there's also names on this list that were that didn't give the system a chance, that really weren't supportive of their teammates as they should have been. They were more worried about their independent result rather than team success. And those are people I don't want on the team to begin with. I want the team to be the focus, not the individual. But it hurts to see the number of wide receivers we've lost, especially the ones that are extremely talented. Some of them make sense. I felt like Kobe Prentice wasn't ever going to get a real chance to be a marquee wide receiver in the offense. But a guy like Caleb Odom, I felt like if he had given it another year, he would have been more of a target, and he was more worried about individual success this season. And not to point out any names, but that's just how I felt about the whole deal. Justin Haynes, I hate to lose him because watching Justice and Jan this season was phenomenal. I felt like they were a good running back duo. I felt we didn't utilize them enough, and that's one of the reasons why Justice Haynes is in the portal. I wish him the best of luck. I did feel like Jam Miller was probably a little bit of a better back than he is, but still I feel like he has a lot of talent, and we didn't utilize him enough. Same thing with Kendrick Law, very talented. Didn't utilize him the way we needed to. Keanu Coate has his own issues. All of these guys have some sort of flaws. We all do as humans, but there's a reason these guys are in the portal and they want to go somewhere else. But Jalen Mbakwe, that's a different scenario. Well, let's go ahead and talk about him and the absolute tampering that has gone on. Now, I'm sure he's not the only player in college football that's been tampered with. I really do think Devonta Smith on this list was tampered with by Notre Dame. You see how quickly he committed once he got in the portal. Things don't happen like that if you don't talk to people before they enter the portal. For sure. But with Mbakwe, rumors came out that a team offered him 7 figures, a starting DB spot, and a chance to play offensive snaps. That team, look, it's Ole Miss. I'm not going to sit here and act stupid. Lane Kiffin's not stupid. Let's not act stupid here. They basically said, here, you want to come make some money, you want to come be a marquee player on the team, basically free star spot for you. And it's tampering. He's not in the portal. You shouldn't be able to contact him. You shouldn't be able to lure him into the portal. It should be illegal. Your university, there should be consequences for it. But unfortunately, the NCAA and where they are at this current moment in time are an absolute joke. They have no control over the sport. Whether that be college football, college basketball, you can go down the whole entire list. Athletes can do whatever the hell they want. They make money now. They make the rules. And these coaches will say, well, we're just going to go ahead and start cheating because that's what it is. Tampering is cheating. And the only reason there's not more uproar about it is because it's happening to Alabama. If it's any other school out there, then there's going to be more of an uproar. But since it's Alabama, everyone likes to point and laugh and say, you got one of your best players taken away. Well, just wait till it happens to you and your university. How are you going to feel when your best player is taken away? I think it's stupid. And it's a rumor. I don't know this for sure. But I'm also not completely stupid, and most of the college football fans aren't completely stupid. We know what's going on behind the scenes. We see what sports writers talk about. People have insider knowledge. Tampering is something that goes on throughout the whole transfer portal cycle. This isn't the first time it's happened. This won't be the last time. But we definitely need to do something about it if we want to save the sport. Because right now, I feel like the sport we know is dying. This last season, it's felt completely different. It hasn't felt like college football. It felt way more like NFL. And that's not really a good thing. That's not what I want to watch. If I wanted to watch NFL football, I go watch NFL. There's a reason I like watching college football, and it's because of the loyalty people have to their teams and the brand that really supported them from the jump. It's all about money now. I don't like watching it. It's really frustrating to see guys who really support and care about as a fan completely turn on your university after acting like they really were invested just because they came across fresh money. I mean, that doesn't mean I don't care about them any less. I hope it works out for them, but it's just a bad spot. The sport's in a terrible spot.
I mean, I don't blame people like Jalen Bachway, Devonta Smith, whoever else wants to go into the portal and get money and get paid for playing the sport they love and they worked hard to get to that point in their career. I don't blame them. I would do the same exact thing. But it comes down to the rules that have been set in place, which there are none. I mean, there really isn't a rule that says you can't contact people when they're out in the portal. I mean, we've seen it. You can't tell me that Berrigan Brown from Kentucky enters the portal and within 3 hours, there's a report out that he's going to be going to LSU. And then you look at Micah Hudson from Texas Tech. He hits the portal. Within 24 hours, it's rumored he's going to A&M. I mean, you can't tell me within 24 hours an athlete makes a decision that's going to impact the future of their career within that short span. You cannot tell me that happens. That has been happening behind the scenes for a long period of time. And it's allowed. It's going to continue to happen until college football puts something in place to prevent it from happening. Penalties, whatever. It's just the sport's in a bad place. And then you talk about the salary cap they put in place this upcoming season, $22 million. Well, look at it right now. We're in the early portion of the period. The top two teams, LSU and Ole Miss. I mean, it's obvious they have the most money when it comes to the SEC right now. Texas is up there, but Texas is worrying about the college football playoff. But it's evident that the salary cap really is not going to work because LSU and Ole Miss have more money than some of these smaller schools, and they're going to benefit. They're going to be able to afford that $22 million salary cap, or let's say a UAB is not going to have $22 million to put into a roster. And we see this in the MLB. There is zero salary cap in the MLB. And who gets all the free agents? The Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets, the big market teams. There's got to be not only a salary cap, but a positional cap or something or minimum you have to spend on a player because you're going to see teams abuse the salary cap if you don't fix it. This sport is in a really bad place that is allowing the top tier teams to benefit and really hurt the smaller teams. Because as we're seeing, the smaller teams get these 2, 3-star, maybe even 1-star recruits to come into their program. They play good for 1 or 2 years, and they're gone. They're at Ole Miss. They're at Alabama. They're at LSU. They're at Auburn. And once again, I don't blame them for going and getting that money and getting in the spotlight. But you're hurting the lower tier programs, and you're making it to where it's going to be a top-heavy sport, and we're only moving closer and closer to the NFL. We're only going to have 30, 32 teams that are really important when it comes to the grand scheme of things. So the transfer portal, you opened a can of worms when you started it, where you could transfer willy-nilly, the NIL, you had no restrictions. You've got to put rules and restrictions in place, or this sport is going to be ruined. Not only college football, but college athletics as a whole. It's already ruined as is. But you got to get it back to some semblance of college athletics or amateur athletics or something, because it's hard to watch. It's hard to support athletes and schools when within 3 months you could have a whole new roster. It's hard. It's really hard for fans to get behind a team when you know there are certain players on that roster that aren't invested in the team. They're just there to get a paycheck and play football. It's angering. Let's move on from this really angering topic, Nathan, and move on to another one, and that being the college basketball AP poll that came out this week for week 7.
Lord have mercy.
Of course, once again, number 1 is the Tennessee Volunteers with 50 first-place votes, followed by number 2, Auburn with 12 first-place votes, 3, Iowa State, 4, Kentucky, 5, Duke, 6, Alabama, 7, Florida, 8, Kansas, 9, Marquette, and 10, Oregon. If you want to go see the rest of that list, you can go look it up on your own time, or you can see it on the screen if you're on Facebook or YouTube. Nathan, did the AP poll get the voting right?
No. This is the question every single week. Did the AP poll get it right? They never get it right. They never understand. Some of these media people, do y'all watch the games? Do you watch what's going on? I'm an Alabama fan, but I can far and agree with my own eyes that I've watched Auburn basketball play time and time again that they are the best team in the country. I don't care if they lost to Duke. They lost a close game on the road to Duke in Cameron Indoor. That is a hard thing to do. And most teams crumble, but Auburn just absolutely whooped up on Ohio State. They've had some of the best wins in the country. They went far in the best as the best team in the country. And unfortunately, I'm having to watch Tennessee as number 1 team. Tennessee, they're a good team. They haven't played really good competition, but if you want to talk about the competition they played, they need a buzzer beater to beat Illinois. For reference, that's the team Alabama put 100 on. It wasn't even close. So let's just take that into account. Iowa State's a good team. I agree with that. I think they should be number 2. I think they're a better team than Tennessee is. Kentucky. So last week they weren't above Duke, but this week they are. I didn't really understand it. So just head-to-head matter now, but it didn't matter last week. What's going on? Anyway, there's 2 very good teams. I think they deserve their spot. Alabama had 6. They deserve to be there. Florida is up there at 7. They haven't really played great competition yet, but the way they were playing, I think you can't deny the eye test that they are one of the best teams in the country. Kansas at 8. I feel like it's like a hair in a biscuit. They just keep hanging in there. They've had bad losses. I go back to the Missouri loss. I think they should have dropped out of the top 10, and yet they're here at 8. Marquette, they lost to unranked Dayton this past weekend. They dropped 3 spots. Three whole spots. But I've seen Alabama get punished for losing at a very good Purdue team and drop out of the top 10. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Oregon at 10, their 1 loss to a very good UCLA team. It's fine. I mean, top 10, I think they're a very good team. UConn back up to 11 after knocking off Gonzaga. I don't agree with UConn being that high of a team, especially after they suffered 3 straight losses and they were still in the top 25. I don't understand how that works. Texas A&M at 12. I like that team. They knock off Purdue in a close matchup. I feel like they're very good. SEC has been so good this season. Gonzaga at 13. I feel that's a good spot for them, even though maybe you should have dropped a little bit more for the loss to UConn. I don't feel like UConn's that marquee team this season. Definitely, I'm not looking for them to win a championship or anything. They don't have that type of roster, unfortunately. Oklahoma at 14, they dropped. They dropped it even though they won. They were 10-0. They were undefeated. I don't understand. I don't understand how you can drop Oklahoma for winning. That is one thing I've never understood in the poll. Houston at 15. They have a lot of losses, man. It's hard to put them in there. But they're a good basketball team. They're not a great one this season, unfortunately. Purdue, 16, fine. Ole Miss, 17, fine. I feel like UCLA should be a little higher, but that's just me. I feel like they're a better team than Ole Miss is at this current moment in time. But that's just based off the eye test. Cincinnati, good team. They picked up a win against Xavier in the Crossroads Showdown. I thought that was a good win for them. Michigan State, They're an all right team. Memphis picking up a big win at Clemson. That their resume is one of the best in the country, especially that win over UConn early in the Maui Invitational. That's doing a lot for them. Dayton picking up a big win against Marquette. That's going to really supply them a good spot and fight for that tournament position. San Diego State, I go back to the Players Era tournament. If they would have had a little bit more success, then I would think they would be a higher seed. But thus far, they haven't had the greatest season of all time. But that's what happens when you use Lamont Butler to Kentucky in the portal, and he goes and doesn't miss shots. Kind of sucks. Michigan 24, they're a good team. They got a lot of talent. I've been excited to watch them. And then Clemson not dropping out of the top 25. You can make an argument that they should, but they beat Kentucky. It's hard. It's kind of the flip-flop games. You don't really understand the identity of the team until really you get into conference play. But for the most part, I felt like the top half of the AP poll was just garbage, and that's how it continues to be. Alex, I mean, you can't sit here and tell me Tennessee's the best team in the country. You cannot.
Well, here's my thing: it's like the CFP poll. It's a double standard. Okay, you have Tennessee at 1. Why? Because they're undefeated. Well, why is Florida not number 2? They're undefeated. Why did Oklahoma drop? They're undefeated. It's a double standard that baffles me time and time again. If you're going to make it to where if you're undefeated, you benefit, then you put the undefeated teams atop the poll. But because Auburn has the one loss to a Duke team that's number 5, they lost to them in Cameron Indoor, you're going to have Auburn at 2. I don't understand Auburn being at 2. If you can tell me with a straight face that Tennessee's better than Auburn, I really want to know what you're smoking. I really do. Because Auburn is far and away the best team in the country right now. They have a win over number 3. They have a win over number 3. You cannot tell me that that's not beneficial for Auburn. But it's just because they have that one loss to Duke that they're not number 1. The AP poll, once again, disappoints and does not accurately depict who the top 25 teams are in the country. But the problem is, what are we going to use to show the top 25 teams in the country? Are we going to use a combination of the analytics that we have, Kim Palm, Haslam? I mean, there's a ton you can look at. All those have Auburn except one, number 1. Are we going to compile those, use a composite ranking? Might be a little bit better than having AP poll voters that some have a bias, some have an agenda to vote on teams. I think you abolish the AP poll and you move towards a composite ranking for teams. That's where you're going to get an accurate depiction of who the top 25 teams are in the country week in and week out. Do you disagree, Nathan, or do you agree with that?
No, because honestly, one of the biggest things, strength of schedule. Teams who play a good strength of schedule have been absolutely criticized for losing games. I mean, they're playing hard teams, and then you have people who have gone through a cakewalk and are undefeated, and they're rewarded for it. Not saying Tennessee is the easiest schedule in the world, but I mean, their toughest opponent has this far been Illinois. It hurts to see teams not get rewarded for playing a good schedule, because Auburn's had one of the hardest schedules. Alabama's had one of the hardest schedules. Kentucky's been through a gauntlet. Iowa State has too. But yet you still have to sit there and watch Tennessee be one. I don't agree with it. It's stupid. I haven't agreed with it for years. College basketball AP poll has been one of the worst things for the past 3 years. I felt like we've had this issue time and time again where a team should be ranked number 1, and guess what? They're not, because there's some type of agenda. Guaranteed, none of this matters. None of this matters till March when your team's selected and you get seated somewhere. But unfortunately, the way the AP poll works, it kind of supplies the committee and who they put where, in what bracket, and what seating, what region they go to. So this is early on right now. Let's go ahead and start fixing it. Let's go ahead and start putting teams where they need to go, because if the tournament started today and you're saying Tennessee's the top overall seed, and they get to pick where they go, guess what? They're going to pick to play in the South, and Auburn's going to have to go play somewhere else. That's what's screwed up to me. So you need to get it fixed now rather than waiting down the line and say, oh, we messed up. We don't have the right team, number one. We don't have the right teams where they need to be, because this is an early sign of who's going to be seated where. And right now it's a crap show.
Let's focus a little bit on the SEC here, Nathan, because I think we can both agree that the SEC is the deepest basketball conference right now. You have Seth Greenberg last weekend talk about how this conference could be a 13-team bid conference to the NCAA tournament. You had Dane Bradshaw on the Alabama broadcast talk about how he wouldn't be surprised if you have 2 or 3 teams with a below 500 win-loss in the NCAA tournament. I'm talking about conference win-loss, in the NCAA tournament. Do you think the SEC can be a 13-team bid conference come in March Madness?
I have no doubt. I mean, you look at how talented these teams are. They've been very exhilarating to watch. I mean, every single time I turn to an SEC team playing basketball, it's hard, it's physical. They know how to score. I mean, these are some of the best teams in the country. The unfortunate factor is they're going to beat up on each other come conference time. And when that happens, how do these matchups take into account how hard they are? Because every single time you play a game in the SEC, you're going to have the SEC on SEC matchup. It's either going to be a quad 1 game or a quad 2 game. That's the crazy thing right there. That's how you know a conference is deep, when you're constantly playing a quad 1 game every single time you're playing. That should be high and away taken into account when seeding is filled out and can March. Because a lot of these teams, I feel like they're going to get screwed out of a tournament position when they have a really good team and they've fought hard, but they're not going to be able to win some of these games just because the other team is a little bit better. All these teams are so talented. I mean, honestly, I don't know who you picked to sit out. I mean, South Carolina obviously hasn't had the greatest season thus far, but I still feel like they could be a tournament team if they wanted to be. And that's the crazy thing. I think every single team in the SEC could be a tournament team if they just take care of their business. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Someone has to lose, but it's crazy to think that a year ago we were talking about the Big 12 and how deep they were, and now you look at the SEC and just historically, I mean, this is probably the year that it's historically one of the best conferences. I've went through. I've seen ACC play. I've seen Big 12 play. I've seen Big 10 play, and how deep their conference is. It's never been 13 teams deep. It's not been that crazy. It's a gauntlet, man. Now, I think the even bigger question is: does an SEC team win the tournament this year, or does one of the teams from the field take the title? When's the last time the SEC won the tournament? What, 2008?
Had to be at the Kentucky Championship.
Yeah, I remember it was Kentucky, but it's been a while. So I think the SEC is due time to win a title. I think this year is a golden year to do it. I don't know. It's still early on. We haven't even made it out of December yet, so it's hard to say. But I like a lot of these teams to go ahead and make a bid for the tournament come March.
I appreciate LSU for screwing up the SEC's winning streak. I appreciate that. Nathan, what SEC team are you surprised by thus far?
Gosh, I'd say Oklahoma. I definitely didn't expect them to be 10-0. Their most recent game against Oklahoma State, they really took care of business. I mean, they've just won, and that's the biggest thing. I felt they had a lot of holes in the roster, and that they weren't as talented as I thought they were. But I think it's a combination of coaching and the amount of talent they've had on the team that's helped them to secure some of these wins. They've been impressive. Another team, Missouri, knocking off Kansas. They've been pretty cool to watch. And then Mississippi State with Josh Hubbard. I mean, they had a close game against Mississippi State, but I tell you what, Mississippi State is a very, very good mid-major to go against. And that's probably going to be a tournament team. So it's the teams that have really been tested too. Like you can go down the list here. I think Auburn is obviously the best team in the conference, but Tennessee is very good. Alabama's good. Texas A&M, I really like the way that they played, especially with the win over Purdue. So it's hard to pick one just because every single team has had that one game that you're like, wow, that was a really cool game to watch. That's a really good team right there.
I think Kentucky's a team that I'm really surprised about. When they hired Mark Pope on this podcast and the show, we kind of gave him a clowning for hiring Mark Pope. But you see what he's done in just this short period of time. Went over number 6 Duke, went over Gonzaga, went over Louisville, their arch rival. I mean, he's won big games. That's something Coach Cal couldn't do for the longest time. And to have Mark Pope come in, to bring in the portal class he brought in, I mean, they have 6-7 guys that could give you 25 points any game. This team is really, really scary. I think it's one of the best Kentucky teams they've had in a hot minute. And I know they've had a lot of talented freshmen, but we've seen under Coach Cal, a lot of those talented freshmen not work out. And Mark Pope has really revitalized this program. And Kentucky's playing really good basketball. This team, come March, could win the whole entire thing, and I would not be surprised. Lamont Butler the other night, like you touched on earlier, Nathan, went perfect from the field and dropped, I believe, 33 points.
Yeah, 33 points is insane when you're shooting perfect.
I mean, so Kentucky is a very scary team come March. And there's tons of other teams. Florida's really good. Walter Clayton's playing his best basketball. Richard, you have tons of other guys there out of the portal. Tennessee, you had Amari Gainey have a really good game against Illinois. We were surprised about that. I mean, last year he was a rotational guy. This year he's really looking like the first or second option offensively. Mississippi State with Josh Hubbard, when they lose Tolu Smith, kind of thought that program, even with Josh Hubbard returning, might take a step back and sort of be that lower tier SEC program. But they're playing good basketball. Georgia has been a bottom feeder in the SEC for college basketball for a long, long time. Even when they had Anthony Edwards, they weren't that great. But they're playing really good basketball. They're 9-1. I mean, this conference, top to bottom, is the best I've ever seen it. And I love it. I love that every night I turn on an SEC matchup, I'm not going to know who's going to win that basketball game. It can go either way. And in years past, you turn on an Alabama-Vanderbilt game, you're like, oh, Vanderbilt, the Alabama's probably going to win that game unless Scottie Pippen Jr. gets bailed out by the refs. But, I mean, it's going to be great basketball to tune in when SEC play starts in a couple of weeks. Just watch these matchups night after night. I'm super excited for conference play to start up, not only in the SEC, but around the country, because these are going to be some competitive matchups. And March is so close. So close, it feels like. Can't wait.
It's not only every given Saturday, it's every given Tuesday, every given Wednesday, and every given Saturday. It doesn't matter what day you're playing on. If you're playing in the SEC, if you have an SEC matchup, you have no clue who's going to win. You might think you know who's going to win, but it's not going to happen the way you think.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching, students of the game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.